The emerald lightning crackled overhead, casting eerie flashes through the dense canopy of Vidya. Constant rain pattered against massive leaves, creating a hypnotic symphony that had been the backdrop to Curillian life for millennia. In the brief illumination of each lightning strike, the true majesty of the jungle revealed itself. Towering trees with trunks wider than 10 Curillians standing side by side, bioluminescent fungi clinging to every surface, pulsing with gentle blue-green light in the swirling mist that carried both life and death in its corrosive embrace. Deep within the root heart sanctum, Elder Zyra moved with deliberate grace despite her advanced years. Her slender form was adorned with the chitinous plates that had evolved to protect Curillians from their harsh environment, iridescent in the glow of the sanctuary's biolights, ridged with patterns that told the story of her lineage. Her large multifaceted eyes reflected the light of the failing energy shields. The eastern perimeter has been breached again, Kale reported, his young voice tight with controlled fear. Unlike Zara, whose plates had dulled with age, Kale's exoskeleton gleamed with the vibrant greens and blues of youth. We lost 3 more defenders. The Vir are using a new kind of sonic pulse. It liquefies the defensive fungal barriers before they even make contact. Zyra nodded, the movement barely perceptible, and our countermeasures ineffective. Kale admitted, mandibles clicking in frustration. The spore grenades slow them momentarily, but their adaptive filters neutralize the particles within minutes. Around them, the root heart sanctum hummed with desperate activity. The massive chamber carved within the living heart of an ancient tree housed the last significant population of Curillians on Viridia. Once their civilization had spanned the entire eastern continent, living in harmony with the violent beauty of their world. Now they were reduced to this. A few hundred survivors clustered in their most sacred place, watching as their world was methodically dismantled around them. The bioorganic displays that monitored the shield network flickered erratically, the living tissue struggling to maintain cohesion as power fluctuated. Curillian technicians, if such a word could apply to their unique melding of biology and rudimentary technology, worked frantically to redirect energy from non-essential systems. Show me, Zyra commanded softly. Kale guided her to the observation platform, a balcony extending from the inner wall of the root heart that looked out through a carefully concealed opening in the tree's massive trunk. The view was partially obscured by sheets of rain, but in the distance, illuminated by the lightning and their own harsh artificial lights, the Vir advance was visible. They moved with mechanical precision through the jungle, sleek, dark shapes that resembled a nightmarish fusion of insect and reptile, augmented with cybernetic enhancements. Their armor gleamed wet in the rain, impervious to the corrosive elements that would dissolve unprotected flesh in minutes. Where they passed, the jungle died. Chemical defoliants hissed from dispersal units, reducing century-old growth to bubbling sludge. Sonic emitters mounted on their larger units sent pulses through the ground that shattered the complex root systems below. They do not even harvest what they kill, Zyro observed, her voice carrying the weight of incomprehension that had plagued the Curillians since the Vekker's arrival. They simply destroy. A distant rhythmic thudding began to penetrate even the thick walls of the root heart. The sound was deep, resonating at a frequency that made the very air vibrate uncomfortably. What is that? Kale asked, though the dread in his voice suggested he already knew. A Curillian communications specialist approached, her movements jerky with panic. Elder, they've deployed an atmosphere drill at the northwestern quadrant. The energy signature is the largest we've detected. They're targeting the root heart directly. Zyra closed her inner eyelids briefly, a gesture of momentary withdrawal that the Curillians permitted themselves in times of extreme distress. When she opened them again, her resolve had hardened. Our final shield. It will not withstand a direct assault from their drill, the specialist admitted. Perhaps 2 hours at most. Zyra had nodded again. Have we received any response to our distress calls? The silence that followed was answer enough. 4 months. They had broadcast their plight on every frequency they could access. The wider galactic community, what little they knew of it, had either not received their messages or chosen to ignore the fate of a primitive species on a hostile world that most spacefaring races considered uninhabitable. Very well, Zaius said. Initiate the Song of Passage. Kale's antennae quivered in surprise. Elder, the song is meant for. I know it is meant for. Zyra interrupted gently. It is our final testament. If we are to join our ancestors, let the stars at least record that we existed. The communications specialist bowed deeply and retreated to carry out the order. Minutes later, the deepest level of the root heart awakened. Established secure channel to Major Petrova. The display shifted to show a woman with closed-cropped dark hair and eyes that had seen too much warfare. She wore the matte black combat armor of the Reapers, Earth's most elite special forces unit, the only marking a small crimson nightingale barely visible on her collar. Major Thorne began without preamble. Project Nightingale is active. Objective: enforce Life Debt Protocol. Omega: neutralize Vir threat to designated indigenous population. Standard rules of engagement suspended. No witnesses, human or Vecker, beyond target zone. Petrova's expression remained professional, but something flickered in her eyes. Recognition of what those orders meant. They were about to engage in an unsanctioned military action against a technologically advanced species, violating at least 3 interstellar treaties in the process. Understood, Admiral, she replied. Reaper teams are ready for deployment. Drop window 20 minutes. Synchronize with the next major atmospheric disturbance. We'll provide orbital support once the ground action confirms contact. An extraction plan. Sir, same as entry. Fast and clean. We leave nothing behind except the impression that the Vecker picked the wrong planet this time. Thorne paused. Is Sergeant Jax on your drop team? Petrova nodded. Yes, sir. He specifically requested assignment when the mission parameters were first developed. Good. He has more right to be there than any of us. Thorne ended the transmission with a gesture. Navigation. Move us into position. Weapons. Prepare for precision strikes on our mark. We wait for ground confirmation before revealing our presence. In the ship's deployment bay, Sergeant Jax methodically checked his equipment for the 3rd time. The ritual was unnecessary. Everything had been prepared to exacting standards, but it helped center his thoughts. Around him, 24 Reaper operatives did the same. The atmosphere tense, but focused. The sleek black drop pods waited, each designed to carry 3 operatives through planetary defenses undetected. Their outer shells would absorb both sensor sweeps and the intense heat of atmospheric entry. Unlike standard military drop vehicles, these were designed for absolute stealth rather than sustained operations. They would serve as insertion vehicles only with extraction handled separately. Jax ran his hand over the neural interface of his helmet, ensuring the connection was clean. As he did, a memory surfaced unbidden. The feeling of cool gelatinous salve being applied to the chemical burns on his face by gentle chit in his hands. The soft clicking speech he couldn't understand. The absolute terror of being a 10-year-old boy stranded on a nightmare world. And the overwhelming relief when he realized these strange beings meant him no harm. His squad leader approached, breaking his reverie. 2 minutes to drop. Jax, you good? Jax nodded, securing his helmet. Never better, he replied, voice steady. Tom pay old debts. The ship shuddered slightly as it maneuvered into optimal position. The deployment bay doors began to open, revealing the swirling chaos of Iridia's upper atmosphere below. Massive storm cells churning, lightning arcing between cloud layers in emerald brilliance. Jax and his team moved into their assigned pod, securing themselves to the internal harnesses. The pod sealed with a soft hiss. Internal displays activating to show external conditions. Deployment in 5 came the countdown over their neural links. 4, 3, 2, 1 release. The drop pods disengaged simultaneously, falling silently toward the storm-racked planet below. Inside his pod, Jax closed his eyes briefly. Let history record. Admiral Thorne murmured to the empty air of the bridge as the tactical display confirmed successful deployment that Earth remembers. In a root art sanctum, the situation had deteriorated rapidly. The Vir drill's relentless advance had breached the outer defensive perimeter. Curillian warriors armed with violences that fired concentrated acid and spore grenades that temporarily disrupted synthetic systems made their last stand at the inner breach point. They fought with desperate courage, but the outcome was inevitable. The Vir units moved with mechanical precision, their pulse rifles cutting down the defenders with cold efficiency. Leading the assault was Apex Unit 7, its enhanced frame towering over the standard Vir drones. Its carapace bore the marks of numerous campaigns. The cybernetic components seamlessly integrated with its evolved biology. Resistance is beneath calculation. It communicated to the collective. Indigenous extinction at 98% completion. Resource extraction to commence upon elimination of final enclave. Zyra watched from the sanctuary's inner chamber as the battle unfolded on their monitoring systems. The surviving Carillians had gathered around her, some praying to ancient gods, others simply waiting with quiet dignity for the end. Suddenly, the monitoring system showed something unexpected. The Vir advance faltered. Several units stopped moving entirely while others began firing at targets that weren't visible on the Curillian sensors. What's happening? Kale asked, leaning closer to the display. Before anyone could respond, a series of deep, muffled booms echoed through the structure, distinct from the drill's constant thunder. The entire sanctuary shook. dust and small fragments of biomatter raining down from the ceiling. On the display, the signals of multiple Veer units simply vanished. At the Veer drill site, Apex Unit 7 was experiencing something unfamiliar: confusion. Its sensor array detected multiple anomalies simultaneously. Communications with the orbital fleet were suddenly degraded. Ground sensors reported movement patterns that appeared and disappeared too quickly to track, and energy signatures flared in impossible locations. Orbital command respond. It transmitted, detecting sensor ghosts. Possible indigenous countermeasure request scanned from upper atmosphere. The response came fragmented, broken by interference. Under attack. Unknown vessel stealth technology. Before Apex Unit 7 could process this information, the stormlash canopy above the drill site erupted in new movement. Black objects plummeted from the clouds. Their descent slowed only at the last possible moment by silent gravitational cushioning. They struck the ground with precision, avoiding Veer concentrations initially, not out of caution, but for strategic positioning. The drop pods split open and black armored figures emerged with fluid, coordinated movement. Their armor seemed to absorb the ambient light, making them difficult to track, even for the Veer's enhanced visual systems. They moved with a speed and precision that matched the Veker's mechanical efficiency, but with an adaptability that was unmistakably human. Major Petrova's voice cut across the neural net, linking the Reaper teams. Alpha Team, secure the drill. Bravo, create perimeter. Charlie and Delta, push toward the sanctuary. Weapons free, targets designated. The Reapers engaged with lethal efficiency. They had trained for this scenario for years, studying every scrap of intelligence on Veer physiology and technology. Their weapons were specifically designed for this environment and enemy. EMP grenades that disrupted the Veer's cybernetic systems. Sonic pulses calibrated to the exact frequency that shattered their carapaces. High-velocity projectiles that carried payloads of corrosive agents that ate through their armor from the inside. Apex Unit 7 watched as its forward units were systematically dismantled. These were not the desperate, uncoordinated attacks of the Kurillians. This was something else, a military force with doctrine, discipline, and technology nearly equal to the Veer zone. All units converge on unknown hostiles. It commanded priority override. Eliminate new threat before proceeding to indigenous enclave. The Veer forces responded immediately, abandoning their assault on the Rootart to engage the Reapers. The jungle battlefield became a chaos of weapons fire, emerald lightning, and relentless rain. Jax led his squad through the dense undergrowth, moving toward the sanctuary entrance identified in their mission briefing. They encountered minimal resistance initially. The main Veer force had been drawn to Petrova's frontal assault, but as they approached the Rootart, they encountered a group of Kurillian defenders who had ventured out to investigate the sudden change in the battle. The Kurillians reacted with alarm at the sight of new armored figures emerging from the jungle, raising their biolenses defensively. Kale, leading the group, chittered a warning to his companions. Hold fire. Jax commanded his squad, raising his hand, making a decision that went against standard protocol. He reached up and detached his helmet, exposing his face to Vidya's corrosive atmosphere. His suit's collar immediately deployed a localized atmospheric filter, creating a small pocket of breathable air around his head. He looked directly at Kale and spoke a single word, one he had practiced countless times over the years, ensuring his human vocal cords could approximate the complex clicks and tones of the Kurillian language. Vashta, friend, safe. Kale's antennae quivered in shock. His large eyes studied Jax's face with evident confusion. The other Kurillians maintained their defensive posture. Uncertain. We're here to help. Jax continued in English, knowing they wouldn't understand the words, but hoping his tone would convey the meaning. We're fighting the Veer. We're on your side. Understanding dawned slowly in Kale's expression. He lowered his biolance cautiously and made a series of clicking sounds to his companions. They too lowered their weapons, though their posture remained wary. Jax resealed his helmet. Team, we've made contact with friendlies. Establish a defensive perimeter around the sanctuary entrance. Nothing gets through to them. As his squad moved to comply, Jax received a transmission from Prova. Jax's status made contact with the Kurillians Major. They're letting us through. Securing their position now. Good. Be advised. Veer are regrouping for a counteroffensive. Hold that position at all costs. The Admiral says the orbital situation is developing favorably. In the upper atmosphere in near space around Viridia, the Silent Vigil and its escort of stealth frigates had finally revealed their presence. They decloaked in a carefully choreographed sequence, appearing in positions that gave them optimal firing solutions on the unsuspecting Veer fleet. the Veer ships, their attention focused on the planet below and the sudden loss of ground communications, had no warning. The first they knew of the Earth fleet presence was when silent railgun slug traveling at a significant fraction of light speed tore through their hulls and plasma torpedoes materialized seemingly from empty space to detonate against their shields. On the bridge of the silent vigil, Admiral Thorne watched the tactical display with the same calm he'd maintained throughout. Target their propulsion and communications first, he ordered. I want them isolated and immobile before we move to weapons. The Earth's ships executed his commands with precision. The stealth technology that had concealed their approach now served a different purpose, allowing them to appear and disappear from Veer sensors, striking from unexpected vectors, never presenting a solid target. Sir, his tactical officer reported, Veer command ship is attempting to deploy fighters. Understood. Released the EW suite. Full spectrum. A new kind of attack joined the physical assault. Electronic warfare packages that invaded Veer systems, corrupting launch sequences, scrambling targeting algorithms, inducing critical failures in life support and power distribution. The Veer, for all their technological prowess, had never encountered this particular blend of Earth military doctrine and adaptive software. Their formations broke, ships firing blindly into space or at sensor ghosts. Some began emergency jumps to FTL, abandoning their ground forces entirely. Sir, ground commander requesting fire support, the communications officer announced. Major Petrover reports heavy Veer counterattack near the indigenous sanctuary. Thorne studied the coordinates. Designate target area. Prepare precision kinetic strike. Minimal yield. Maximum accuracy. On the surface, the battle had intensified. Apex Unit 7 had rallied the remaining Veer forces for a desperate assault on the Rootheart and the human interlopers defending it. The jungle around the sanctuary had become a hellscape of weapons fire, burning vegetation, and driving rain that hissed as it struck superheated metal. Jax and his squad had established a defensive position at the sanctuary entrance, joined by Kurillian warriors who'd overcome their initial shock to fight alongside the humans. The Kurillians guided the Reapers through hidden access points and passages, allowing them to flank Veer units that thought themselves securely positioned. Inside the sanctuary, Zyra had emerged from the inner chambers, her ancient eyes wide with disbelief as she witnessed humans, a species most Kurillians had only heard of in stories, fighting and dying to protect them. Kale fought at Jax's side, his knowledge of the terrain proving invaluable. He indicated a narrow ravine where Veer units were gathering for another push. There they come through there. Jax relayed the information to Petrova, who had joined their position with her command squad. Major, heavy concentration in the ravine east of our position. Too many to engage directly. Petrova nodded, her expression grim behind her visor. Understood. She switched to the command channel. Silent Vigil. This is ground command, requesting fire support at the following coordinates. Danger close. The acknowledgement came immediately from Thorne himself. Ground command. Stand by. Fire support incoming. Take cover. Petrova signaled to all units. All forces find cover immediately. Orbital strike inbound. The warning came just in time. Seconds later, a pencil-thin beam of coherent light stabbed down from the storm clouds, striking the ravine where the Veer had concentrated. The light was followed an instant later by a solid projectile moving at hypersonic speed. A tungsten rod dropped from orbit, its kinetic energy converting to explosive force on impact. The explosion was precisely contained but devastatingly effective. The ravine and everything in it simply ceased to exist, replaced by a smoking crater. The shock wave buffeted the defenders, but the careful calculations of the Silent Vigil's weapons officers ensured that it dissipated before causing serious damage to either the human forces or the Rootheart. Apex Unit 7 watched the destruction of its reserve force with what in a more organic being might have been described as horror. Its tactical assessment algorithms reached an inescapable conclusion. Defeat was imminent. The indigenous species had allies with technology and tactics that matched or exceeded the Veer zone. Orbital support was gone. Ground forces were being systematically eliminated. It made one final decision, rerouting all power to its mobility systems. If it could reach the sanctuary's core, it could still complete at least part of its mission, the elimination of the Kurillian leadership. A single decisive strike. It moved with unexpected speed, breaking through the perimeter at its weakest point, charging directly toward the sanctuary entrance where Zyra had emerged to witness the battle. Its weapon systems charged, targeting the Elder directly. Jack saw the movement too late. He was positioned on the opposite side of the entrance, engaging a group of Veer drones. By the time he turned, Apex Unit 7 was already mid-leap. its trajectory taking it directly toward the defenseless Zyra. Without conscious thought, Jax threw himself into the unit's path. They collided in midair, crashing to the ground in a tangle of human and Vecker limbs. Apex Unit 7's enhanced strength gave it the immediate advantage, pinning Jax to the muddy ground, its weapon arm reconfiguring to deliver a killing blow. Jax fought with desperate strength, holding the lethal appendage just inches from his face. His armor's servos whined in protest, power reserves dropping as they tried to match the Veer's output. Suddenly, a biolance pierced through Apex Unit 7's carapace from behind. Kale had circled around and struck at the precise joint where the unit's protective plating was thinnest. The lance's acidic payload discharged directly into the Veer's internal systems. Apex Unit 7 convulsed, its systems going haywire. Jax seized the opportunity, twisting free and drawing his combat knife, a monomolecular blade designed specifically for penetrating Veer armor. With a precise practice motion, he drove it up through the unit's sensory cluster, severing the connections between its organic brain and cybernetic components. The light in Apex Unit 7's compound eyes flickered and died. Its limbs twitched once, then went still. Around them, the battle was ending. Without their commander, the remaining Veer units fell into disarray, their collective consciousness fragmented. The Reapers eliminated them with methodical efficiency. Jax, breathing heavily, pushed the dead Veer off him and climbed to his feet. He found himself face to face with Zyra, whose ancient eyes studied him with an intensity that seemed to peer into his soul. Petrova approached, her armor scarred from battle, but her movements still fluid and controlled. Ground objectives achieved, she reported over the command channel. Veer ground forces neutralized, Kurillian leadership secure in orbit. Admiral Thorne received the report with a slight nod. Understood. Major, begin extraction preparations. We leave no trace of our presence except results. The aftermath of battle settled over the jungle around the Rootart Sanctum. The constant rain washed blood, both human and Vecker, into the soil. Smoke rose from damaged equipment and burning vegetation only to be beaten down by the Deluge. Reaper medics moved among the wounded, treating both their own and the Kurillians with equal care. Inside the sanctuary, a temporary command post had been established. Supply crates bearing the UNS insignia were opened, revealing medical equipment, power cells, and basic provisions, enough to help the Kurillians recover, but nothing that would dramatically alter their technological development. Jax stood apart from the activity, having removed his helmet again to speak directly with Zyra and Kale. The conversation was halting, limited by the language barrier, but the essence was conveyed through gesture and the few Kurillian words Jax had learned. "You came," Zyra said. Her clicking speech translated roughly through a handheld device one of the technicians had programmed with the limited linguistic data from the Odyssey archives. "What?" Jax reached into a compartment on his armor and withdrew a small object, a polished seed pod from a Vidian plant carved with intricate patterns. It had been given to him by the Kurillian who had tended his wounds decades ago. "Long ago," he said simply, "your people saved mine. We remembered." Zyra took the seed pod, her delicate fingers tracing the patterns with recognition. "This was Nearus, my predecessor. He spoke of humans he once helped." Jax nodded. "I was one of them, a child. He saved my life." Understanding dawned fully in Zarao's expression. She made a gesture that the translation device couldn't interpret, but its meaning was clear, a profound acknowledgement of the cycle completed. On the bridge of the silent vigil, Thorne activated the wideband communication system. He broadcast a brief message on frequencies that would be detected by monitoring stations throughout the sector. "Decades ago on Vidia, kindness was shown when none was expected. Earth remembers its debts. This balance is now paid." He ended the transmission abruptly, ensuring it was too brief to be traced to its source. It would remain a mystery to anyone who intercepted it except those who needed to understand. "Prepare for withdrawal," he ordered. "All teams have 1 hour to complete extraction. Leave nothing that identifies us specifically." The Reaper squads began their coordinated withdrawal as stealth dropships descended through the storm clouds to predecided extraction points. They moved with the same silent efficiency that had marked their arrival, vanishing into the jungle like ghosts. Major Petrova approached Jax as he finished his conversation with the Kurillians. "Time to move out, Sergeant." Jax nodded. "Just 1 more minute, Major." Petrova studied him for a moment, then nodded. 1 minute." She moved away to coordinate the final extraction. Jax turned back to Zyra and Kale. "We have to go now. We can't stay." Zyra inclined her head. "We understand your presence here breaks rules." Jax smiled slightly. "Many rules, But some debts transcend politics. Will others come after you? Jax shook his head. No, we've done what we came to do. The Vir in this sector have been discouraged. It will be some time before they return, if ever. What happens next is up to you. Zyra placed one hand on Jax's arm, the gesture surprisingly human. We will remember as he remembered. With a final nod to both Curillians, Jax resealed his helmet and moved to join his squad at the extraction point. Within minutes, the drop ships had risen back into the storm clouds, leaving no trace of their presence except the wreckage of the Vir forces and the supplies they'd chosen to leave behind. The Earth fleet phased out of Vidia's system as silently as they had arrived, jumping to FDL at precisely calculated points that would mask their trajectory from any observer. Project Nightingale returned to the shadows from which it had emerged. On Vidia, the storms continued their eternal cycle. The rain fell, the lightning flashed, and the jungle began the slow process of reclaiming the battlefield. The Curillians emerged cautiously from the root heart sanctum, surveying the changed landscape. The immediate threat was gone. The constant fear that had defined their existence for so long had lifted, if only temporarily. They began the process of recovery, salvaging what they could from the battlefield, reinforcing their defenses with the knowledge gained from observing both their enemies and their unexpected saviors. As twilight deepened beneath the storm clouds, Zyra stood at the edge of the sanctuary, the carved seed pod cradled in her hands. Kale joined her, his young face marked now with the experience of battle, but also with renewed hope. Do you think they will come again? He asked. If the Vir return, Zyra contemplated the question. Perhaps, perhaps not, but they have given us something more valuable than their continued protection. What? The knowledge that we are not alone. She looked up at the storm clouds that had always defined the boundaries of their world. Somewhere beyond those clouds, someone remembered us when they had every reason to forget. That is a kind of immortality. Kale to be remembered. The emerald lightning flashed, illuminating their faces, weary but unbowed. The jungle around them pulsed with bioluminescence, life continuing its patient cycle. The future remained uncertain. The Vir might return. The wider galaxy might still be indifferent to their fate, but they had survived. They had survived because someone somewhere remembered in the profound silence left behind by the warriors who had fallen from their sky. That simple truth was